Hi everyone, and welcome to the Generalist, where security practitioners come to look beyond niches, silos, egos, and hopefully build their competence and credibility. So it's a great privilege for me today to do another special feature. It's special for many reasons. For one is that I have my great friend Travis Lishok joining me. We've been collaborating, maybe some of you have seen, on a bunch of things. And also with us is a person who I think has, probably doesn't need a whole lot of introduction, because I am a big follower, and I also subscribe to his views. I follow him, and people of his cadre, of his stature. With us today is Fred Burton. Both Fred and Travis are very much involved with the company called Ontic, which does provide a very comprehensive threat intelligence platform, and has been working with the community of practitioners to enable them both through education, but also through a set of technological advances to build better threat intelligence capabilities. So what we're discussing today is a recent paper. It's a research paper that Travis and I collaborated on. It discusses a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, simply because I'm, I guess, a product of the same environment. It's the topic of career development in the security industry. What Travis and I initially discussed, and I guess I probably lamented a little bit about, is that there has to be a point in our industry, hopefully soon, when we will move forward beyond just the certifications, when we will start looking at more comprehensive, structured ways in which we can attain better knowledge, in which we can educate ourselves, build our competence and credibility. That obviously starts in some ways with great academic foundations, but there are also some tasks that we each of us own. And so we devoted some of the design of this research and the analysis to trying to discern how would we, what's going on with the practitioners in the industry? How do they look at education? How do they embrace continual learning? And so today, what I'd like to do is to offer you thoughts from my friend Travis Lishok, from my new friend and the person I've been following for many years, Fred Burton. And what I will ask you to do, guys, if you don't mind, please take about a minute to introduce yourselves for those that may not have met you. And just please share with us kind of where you hail from and what you've been up to recently. Fred, if you don't mind, shall we start with you?
My pleasure. Well, first, thank you very much for having me on the Generalist. And I greatly appreciate your very kind words for that lead up. In fact, I might reach out to you to become my new marketing officer after this podcast. I appreciate that. You're very kind. I'm Fred Burton, and I'm the executive director for the Ontic Center for Protective Intelligence. And what Travis and I are trying to do with our center is provide thought leadership on this topic, specifically the topic of protective intelligence, which is something that I've been engaged with since the 1980s. And I'm very proud of the fact that our program that we started and implemented inside the Beltway continues very actively today. And I was fortunate enough to have transitioned that program to the private sector back in the 90s. And so now with the Center for Protective Intelligence, what we're trying to do, again, is to not only collaborate, but encourage thoughtful content and exchanges and dialogues like we're doing now to educate practitioners, especially those eager for knowledge in this space. So thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure. Travis, over to you.
Yes, so currently I'm the Associate Director of Ontic Center for Protective Intelligence, where I get the opportunity to work alongside great people like Fred, Tom Kopecki, Virginia Simmons here in our office. And we get to create thought leadership, create interesting research such as what we're going to talk about today. And then what led me here was previously working in corporate executive protection, supporting a private family office. Before that, working in private investigations, being a military police reservist in the Marine Corps, and then also, in spite of being a Marine, also being a graduate student of applied psychology currently.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing this. Lots of interesting endeavors, I notice, that already should incentivize those that are listening to us to think about continual learning. Because as I'm listening, you share what you're up to. Just the fact that there is a Center for Protective Intelligence and such a great organization that can inspire others to just, I guess, at least follow, at least consume new content and share ideas. We probably need so much more of it. So thank you very much, Will, for having contributed to this and to leading for leading the efforts. Travis, I will now move this over to you to share with us your thoughts about, like, how did we start, why this idea visited you, what kind of how we shaped this, and maybe give us a brief presentation on what the outcomes were of this research on career development and security.
Definitely. So first, I'll start with what inspired it. So Ilya, you were one of the big inspirations for this because you do so many initiatives in helping young aspiring professionals and listening to your experiences. So first, you were one of the big inspirations, but then also just really in every security role I've ever had, there's always kind of a delicate balance of, very urgent needs of our stakeholders and our clients, and then trying to balance that with our own professional development, which is, a difficult balancing act for all of us. And the purpose of our research was really to identify opportunities for growth and professionalization across our community of security practitioners. And then also to potentially, and we've already taken steps to do this now, but to bring the research that we've done here around career development to professional organizations so that they can tailor the survey to their own needs, run it across their membership, and then tailor that for specific initiatives that they're doing in regard to mentorship and continual development. And one of the big questions that we aimed at answering when we were doing the research was, how do security practitioners approach their own career development? And I think we got a great amount of data around this, which we'll jump to in just a second. And then next, I just wanted to touch on our methods. So how do we go about gathering information about this and doing our research? So Ilya and I, plus a couple other practitioners from other professional organizations, collaborated on a survey, created several iterations, ran our own pilot internally, and then we decided on a series of just under 20 questions, and that made up our survey. And then there were about nearly 10 core questions that we ended up settling on, and those are really like the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today. And for that survey, we had nearly 100 respondents, and the way that we went about distributing it was to share it with our professional communities online, and then also our personal networks of security professionals. And then next, I'll transition over to some of our big findings. So to understand the findings, it's important to think about the demographics of those that answered the survey. So they tended to be mid to senior level practitioners in security. So they had over 10 years of experience and they tended to also be over the age of 38. So we just need to keep that in mind as we look at some of our findings. Now, if I try to paint a picture of what the average respondent's approach to career development looked like, I could really break it up in two ways. We could break it up into areas of improvement and then also positive aspects that we're seeing right now. So I'll start off with the positive aspects. So for the average respondent, they tended to engage in topical conversations with those outside of the security industry, and then also follow organizations and thought leaders also outside of the security industry in other fields. Additionally, they maintain a professional journal and their own knowledge management library of resources around what they do. And then also they've assessed their own learning profiles. And then to transition over to the big areas of improvement that really stood out to us, first, for the average respondent, they tended to not have a mentor or a coach. And they also tended to only dedicate about between 1 to 4 hours per week to their continual learning. So those were two big learning points. And then continuing with our findings. So when we did an analysis, we looked at how each respondent answered our 7 core questions within the survey. And based on their answers, we were able to assign them a score between 1 to 10, 1 being a low score, so they dedicate less time, they spend less time collaborating with those in other fields, and then 10 being like the ideal. And we discovered that 2 questions in particular tended to predict about 50% of their score. So if we knew the answer to one of these 2 questions, we could basically know whether they're going to be in the top 50% or the bottom 50%. And those 2 questions were around, do they engage in topical conversations with others outside the security industry, at least monthly? And have they assessed their own learning profile? So assessing their own strengths and weaknesses in terms of competencies that are required for their own work. And one interesting thing, which Ilya, we talked about a little bit already, and I think both of our minds were on track thinking about the same thing, was that one thing that these both share, engaging people in other fields, and then also critically assessing our own competencies, was humility. So that seems to be a big driver of career development as well.
Super.
And then, go ahead.
Yeah, please, go on. Sorry.
And then I was going to begin to jump into some of the recommendations that Ilya and I had based on these. And the first one was around cross-industry collaboration. And Ilya, I wanted to see if you could jump in and share more about that.
Sure. So, what I found probably most useful in my career has been something that's related to a principle of design thinking. And what I found where I've learned a lot of things that otherwise I probably wouldn't have is when I was listening to people who had nothing to do with security. When I had to deal with people in human resources, whether or not they were right, by the way. Okay, but having to listen to other people's perspectives really informed how I was able to deliver solutions to people I advised. And so I have spent a lot of time working on multidisciplinary teams. And this is where I feel we have received feedback that really points in the direction that people, that at least the respondents, but also for our general community that are striving and aspiring to learn as much as possible within our industry, that it's very, very important to give a thought and collaborate and try to learn from people who are in other industries. And so that's very conducive, let's say, in multifunctional organizations which have multiple divisions, and then the job is easier. But we also found in this research that despite that, a lot of respondents actually do engage in meaningful conversations with people in other industries, regardless of whether they belong to a large organization or a small organization, where the opportunities in-house are limited, right? And so I feel that just like I was pointing to this concept of design thinking, it's really it really opened my eyes when I learned it. And I feel that a lot of the ways in which practitioners can deliver great value, and also as we all strive to please the decision makers, to also help us deliver the return on investment into our capabilities, into the platforms that we use, is by listening to people who are either those whom we advise or people who work alongside us, but don't have the purview of security. So I just wanted to, I'll probably end with that. We can get back to that if you like.
Mm-hmm. Great points. And then the next recommendation that we had was around leaders being able to strive to dedicate at least 5 hours per week to continual learning within their own talent pools. So most of the people answering the survey, they tended to be mid to senior level leaders. So really whatever behavior that they model in the workplace is likely going to have a ripple effect and impact many other people at the same time. And then our third recommendation was leaders should consider formal methods for assessing the competencies of their team members. So that being able to give them something concrete so that they could go ahead and tailor learning opportunities in the workplace to their individual team members. And fourth was, as an industry, we should place a higher emphasis on generalist rather than just specialist skills. So there are many skills that might predict how successful we are in the workplace, and just being an expert, being a certified fraud examiner may not satisfy all the competencies that are necessary, such as being a good writer, being a communicator, being able to share information with stakeholders. So being well-rounded. And then our final one was around mentorship, which was our industry should adapt consistent definitions and qualifications for mentors and coaches, and then also encourage these interactions because they have such an exponential impact across their teams and then across the industry more generally.
I have several points to make, but what I would like to do is, Fred, I appreciate that you've been absorbing the points that Travis made. Can I please ask, feel free if you want to offer like a macro view, or if you found a particular piece of this, of the findings more interesting, would you share with us your thoughts?
Well, first, I applaud you guys for putting this survey together. It's the first I've read on this very unique aspect as it pertains to our industry. And I've always been a lifelong learner. I'm a big believer in that. But I also am, the older I get, more apt to practice the art of listening, which I think as a younger man, I didn't pay much attention to. But I was fascinated with Travis's survey results and just taking it all in. But, you know, a couple things leap out to me, Ilya and Travis, is that I think that's very consistent to what I've seen in my career with, in general, what happens in our sector. And I think there's probably a lot of operational reasons for that, meaning Travis's point on only 1 to 4 hours a week to learning. I wrote that down and highlighted that piece. And I don't know if that's because of just the operational tempo as it pertains to any job. But we all know in this field, having sat in many follow cars and many counter surveillance operations, there's always time to read and think and study, which I'm obviously a big advocate of. And the other thing that I thought was most interesting is that we've all had bosses, but not necessarily mentors. And I've had and been fortunate in my career to have stood on the shoulders of giants at times. And then I think we've all had, if I could speak candidly, bosses that quite frankly were not very good. And what I've always tried to do in this space and continue to do is try to give back as much as I can. And Travis knows this. I'll answer questions from anybody, regardless of who they are, from an undergrad student to somebody from Washington looking for some advice on some issue. But for me, I think it's so important to remind ourselves in this business that remember how we all got here, and how you do have a lot of people that are looking for sage advice or counsel, or just some assessments as to how we could all do our job a little bit better.
Thank you. Much appreciated. I started in this field just by sheer dumb luck, because a person who brought me into Prudential Financial, Paul DeMatteis, whom I still give pretty much all the accolades for just having developed me and helped me along. I could knock on his door probably too many times. I don't know how he didn't at one point lose his patience, but he was one of the people that really showed me how a senior leader is able to cultivate and motivate younger aspiring practitioners, and how much time and effort a leader would invest in development of that young talent. And I could remember what used to be painful memories when I was making tons of mistakes, just answering questions with stupid statements, or just, not processing certain complicated situations properly, and then offering the right solutions for them. People like Paul and various others that I've worked with really showed fantastic patience, and they were able to listen, like Fred said, that no matter what comes out of my mouth during a certain situation, whether the tempo is high or if I simply just don't get it right, there was an element of something that I just want to touch on briefly, that goes beyond mentorship. And I've been a long-standing advocate for discerning the difference between mentorship and coaching. And I go back to the great traditions in sports. I'm an athlete, a former athlete myself. I remember how during games, and I was part of team sports, how a coach would pull me over. He would replace me, or take me off the field, and then go for about 10 minutes showing me how I wasn't moving my body right. How I needed to maybe shift my weight from one leg to the next, to another, and how I needed to maybe have better visibility of the field. And the same level of attention was given to me. Again, I was just probably very lucky by the people who were working with me. They were, on the one hand, were guiding me and sharing with me what the industry looked like, and where I could turn for help and what resources were available. But at the same time, when I was producing poor work, they looked at it and they said, no problem. Let us help you fix those minute mistakes that appear to be all disjointed, but in the grand scheme of things, they're actually producing a much more cohesive effort, better ability to advise others. And so I feel like the reason why we, I guess, selected that specific language for our question is we wanted to also ask participants and at least remind them that there is a big difference between coaches and mentors. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If you guys have any ideas about that, or if you've experienced some of that, please feel free to share. Travis, what do you think?
Yeah, as you're talking, there was one idea I had around mentorship and being able to seek mentors. And even for people that maybe they're working in one of their first security jobs and they don't have that mentor, that person that they can necessarily model and look up to. I've had an interesting experience during some of my online courses that I'm doing right now, where we typically get a handful of assignments, or we have to reach out to professionals that are, senior leaders in their own industries, whether it's organizational psychology or user experience design, and reaching out to them on LinkedIn just to have a conversation and to get them to critique something you're doing, or to get just to get career advice. And you'd be surprised how willing people are, people that you've never met before, to actually help you and mentor you and coach you and share information and share learnings that they've had throughout their career with just someone that's almost pretty random reaching out to them on LinkedIn. So I think there's a ton of mentorship opportunities, even for someone, maybe they're in one of their first security jobs and they have like one of the bad bosses that Fred mentioned.
Fred, any thoughts on that?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly, Ilya, with what you and Travis have said. And I get LinkedIn requests for comments and advice pretty much every other day. At times, depending upon the scope of media that we've done at Ontic surrounding an issue, sometimes it comes in at a rapid tempo. And it's easy to be dismissive of those kinds of requests and claim that we're too busy. But in reality, you can always make time. And I think as we look back on our own careers, all of us on this podcast, I don't know about you guys, but I certainly did not get here on my own. And I had a hell of a lot of help. And I feel blessed to have that kind of opportunity, not only to have been fortunate to get in an industry that was just starting in many ways in the field of protective intelligence, but then just watching it grow and develop over the course of 30 years. And it's a fascinating look back for me to think of that evolutionary arc of how far we've come. And I'm very excited about what the future brings as a result of that because of the momentum. But as your survey so aptly laid out, we need to make sure we collectively do a better job in helping others and giving people a hand and taking that time to mentor and to provide at times tough love. If I could use an example, I've been fortunate enough to have cobbled together a few books over the past few years, and so literally every other day I get a request for help on a book from somebody, and whether it's a practitioner or a special agent looking to publish their first book, and sometimes everybody needs a little tough love. Much like my literary agent gives me when I submit a proposal to him or a chapter to him that really maybe needs a lot of work. And so one thing I think that comes with a little bit of gray hair, or in some cases no hair, is that kind of constructive criticism I don't bat an eyelash about. And Travis knows this on papers that we've collaborated together with. If somebody has a better way of saying something or producing that in a document to help others, then you should listen. And so I think that, again, that constructive criticism in all of our work is something that if I had to wind back the clock, I would give a 25-year-old Fred Burton better advice to just shut up and listen at times.
Great suggestions here. I think that those that will be tuning in to listen to us, to you, should take this to heart, because I think this also relates to this, to this quality that a lot of us hopefully continue to develop, but I refer to humility. And I think, I guess, in some ways, it's sometimes challenging as you progress in your career. You kind of develop a certain degree of wisdom about it. But at the same time, um, lack of humility, I find, also precludes this ability to help someone else, um, find time for someone else, and to receive criticism and receive it as a blessing rather than as a curse. And so, have you guys, like, I just wanted, forgive me for diverting a bit, but how do you see us as an industry? Do, like, what sense do you get? How humble are we?
That's a great question. I think it really depends on everyone's own individual experience and to some degree the kind of work experience they've had, because I think there's probably some professions where you probably want someone who's less humble and who basically has a lot of confidence in their own ability, even if it is overconfidence. So I think there are some advantages to that, but I think it definitely depends more on their experience, because I've seen it all over. But I'm sure if we compare the security industry to other industries, we might see that people might be a little more overconfident than others. I don't know. Fred, what do you think?
Well, I think it's a great question. And I as you were asking that question, I have flashbacks to times where I was put in situations where I literally had no idea what to do. And I think that people forget at times that we are put in that position. For example, in 1988, I was dispatched to investigate the plane crash which killed the president of Pakistan and our United States ambassador. And I was probably all of maybe 25, 26 years old. And I remember first arriving after a god-awful trip from Andrews Air Force Base to Pakistan to the plane crash site in about a 24-hour window of standing there looking at this smoking hole in the ground and literally overwhelmed, not only with emotion, but fear, because I recognized I was not prepared to do what I had been sent to do. And I think we all have moments in time in the course of our career, whether you're that security professional where the CEO looks at you and says, where do I go next? And you don't know, or you are put into these kinds of situations and you have to figure out a way very rapidly to do the best you possibly can. And sometimes that is good enough. So my lesson learned over a lifetime of being put into these kinds of situations is it's okay not to know, but it's also okay. It's also okay to ask for help. And I see in our space at times that not happening. And I've seen that over the course of my career. Conversely, I have seen an evolution towards the thought process that we're going through now, where you do have a lot of sharing, whether it be on LinkedIn or professional associations or what we're trying to do with the center. And it's okay to say, look, I recognize fully, I don't know all the answers for protective intelligence. Yes, I have been looking at it for a long time, but I welcome new ideas. I want more people to contribute to this process. And I think it's just collectively going to make us better.
Sure. That's a great point. Thank you for sharing it. I want to go back to one point, and I know that we're, as always, short on time. I want to get back to one point that I picked up on and that was very much highlighted in this paper. So when we were comparing groups, and the question was who had the highest career development scores. The first bullet is it kind of, well, I found it to be not surprising in a way, but at the same time, I said, what a great highlight in this paper. The first bullet is females, women, It's something that I found that's been kind of, I've always been paying attention to what degree has our profession allowed, let's say, women to take up more senior roles, to be more engaged, and to lead teams, to be in the senior decision maker capacity. On the one hand, I want to say that I've observed very good results in certain organizations with certain individuals. But on the other, I want to ask you, I don't want to give you what my sense about it. I just want to ask you guys, we're seeing here that the best group of all seems to be women in terms of how they are self-guided, self-driven for professional development. So how do we, what kind of a platform do you think we need to be building as a community? I don't mean like us guys, right? I mean, as a community, how can we learn from women? How can we ask them for guiding us better? And how can we embrace this finding? What does that mean?
I think one way is first just having more diverse teams. So like, I think the protective intel space is really unique in this way because I feel like women probably outnumber men in this space. Like there are some intel teams that I've seen where they might have an entire team that's all women and no men at all. So I think This is a pretty unique space where women are either the majority or it's a near 50-50 split. And then same goes for ARIP. On our ARIP Protective Intel Council, it's Kristen, Jessica, Anna, and then me. So I'm outnumbered 3-1. So I think really it comes down to just embracing a more diverse workforce and team and us being able to build on each other's advantages and disadvantages. Whereas some of the men on the team might be better at X and some of the women on the team might be better at Y or have a better approach to solving different solutions. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Travis. I mean, I see it every day as we engage with protective intelligence teams. As you were asking that question and Travis was responding, this week alone, I've talked to several female protective intelligence analysts and leaders, and so the trending in that direction, I think, dominates, which I think you at times can look at this too from a executive protection practitioner aspect to an analyst kind of aspect, but I've seen a cross mix of both, which is welcome and wonderful, and it's certainly on a operational perspective, having ran countless surveillance teams over the course of my career, it obviously behooves you, if you're a team leader, to have a combination of both, just for operational, practical reasons. But I am very excited about the future in this space when it comes to diversity, and again, just the explosion of this field over the past 3 years is just growing and growing in that direction. So I think that's wonderful.
I'm also very excited about it, and especially to hear it from you guys, because I'm slightly removed from the specifically protective intelligence field. My endeavors today take me into slightly different categories, more fraud management, security consulting, and so on. But what I remember is one of my best teachers at John Jay, right, and who really opened my eyes to policing, to criminal justice systems, and to both challenges and opportunities, was Maki Haberfeld. Maria Haberfeld. She's got a very long list of accomplishments, both She served in law enforcement military in Israel, then helped national police forces transform. Then I think she's, if again, I hope I'm not mistaken, but she's got like double PhD. I mean, listening to her sharing her knowledge, and very, very practical knowledge, because she hasn't been behind the desk as an academic, right? She's been out there in the field delivering solid results for both national interests and also for interests of organizations and police departments. And just listening to her share her knowledge with us in class, that was eye-opening. And I took that thought with me. And the reason why I asked you this question is I'm also a big believer that I see that women in different parts of our industry, it seems, they're far better clued in terms of how to work across different silos, across different functional responsibilities, across different professional knowledge sets. And I've been following a group that's called Women in Security. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, it's an offshoot of ASIS, but they actually provide quite a few very interesting programs, and they also, I think, have one of the better ways in which they help young and aspiring practitioners to be successful in our industry. So when I saw that result, I'm like, man, this is great. I mean, first of all, I'm a big believer in diversity in general, but I felt like, yeah, we need to listen, to hear what women in our industry also have to say, how they observe what we're all doing, and where we can do better. Let me, again, in the interest of time, I'm very, very grateful that Travis, you made such a great presentation. I'll just summarize. It seems to me that this could be an opportunity for us to keep repeating and refining something like this. Again, I don't think either one of us claims ownership of this paper or of the methods. I feel like the whole reason why we did it was because we needed to at least like help people understand that, if we don't measure anything, if we don't ask those pertinent questions, then how do we go about improving anything in terms of career development in our industry? And I would love to have a version of the survey to be repeated on an ongoing basis, and to scale it up to more and more people so that we can get better sample sizes, if you will. And it seems to me like, and I'll ask you one final question on this. So we have these suggested actions for cross-industry collaboration, continual learning, learning profile assessments, and obviously tailoring learning based on those learning profiles, focusing more, call it generalist skills, but skills that take you across the board in our industry. So instead of just focusing, let's say, on executive protection, you'd also start learning about security technologies, or you'd start learning about cybersecurity, and start expanding across different functions, different silos in our industry. And I also see a suggestion for us as leaders, for organizations, and for security teams to start thinking in terms of offering and insisting on having mentors and coaches. But we're still without an academic base. We still don't have a proper system, a network of universities where if I were, let's say, interested in becoming, let's say, an engineer or a doctor, it's easier for me to just see what the pattern is. What is the path for me to become one, right? I feel that although there's been focus in certain niches of our industry to help people from military and law enforcement to transition into our industry, perhaps, and I want to get your thoughts on this, do you think that while all of this transition is taking place and we bring great talent into the industry, do you think we deserve to expand our platform to have a solid academic foundation. And again, I'll say this in relation to the studies. I would love to have more studies of different sorts, be it on career development or something else, but something that has a more scientific base behind it. So my question to you is, aside from studies like these, aside from certifications and how we currently embrace young and aspiring talent, should we start thinking, should we start embracing and cultivating a solid academic base?
Yeah, I think that would be something really interesting to explore, because today I think what we have is kind of like a hodgepodge where we have a collection of universities that have different security studies type programs or threat assessment programs or risk assessment or criminal justice. But I don't know if there's necessarily any clear path. And then also to another degree, I'm not sure like what the mix looks like between instructors that are teaching based on theory versus instructors who, such as like you teaching at John Jay, Ilya, instructors who have gone out there and practiced it themselves. But I do think it would be really interesting to, I don't know, to kind of do a survey of the whole hodgepodge of different courses and trainings out there, and then to consider funneling those into one specific source. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I think you both are spot on. Having watched the evolution of this industry since the 80s, there is no academic location that you can go to specialize or generalize in this field. There's a couple boutique kind of niche college programs that I'm aware of, but I certainly would love to see that along with some degree of expertise in this field. That if someone wants to hone their skill set into whether it be incident management, crisis, emergency action plans, and crisis response, protective intelligence, and so forth. So, yeah, that would be wonderful to see unfold.
Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. I'm a big believer that we should be progressing beyond our industry associations and individual efforts like Travis and I pulled together, right? I see a lot of initiatives like ours pop up here and there, right? But what I'm not seeing is consistency. Consistency of how you would advise and help young talent to enter our industry and be successful in our industry with more comfort and better guidance, more materials, more resources that are, I think, that are more consistent than what we currently offer. And so I was also wondering, the same when we were building this study. This is just a start, I feel. Travis, just quickly, can you share with us what other takeaways or comments you've had about this? Does this have legs? Do you think that that we can, let's say, think about repeating this? Is there a way to engage with industry associations in a way that they could help scale up a version of this survey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so currently I'm chatting with a couple different professional organizations and some of their leaders, seeing how we could potentially modify the survey that we've ran here to distribute to their membership so that they can take a different approach based on specific concrete evidence and how they can execute some of their learning initiatives and mentoring initiatives. And yeah, so I think that will be the future. Sometime, hopefully in the next 6 months or so, we could get that out to some of the larger industry organizations.
And Fred, I want to ask a similar question of you, not so much kind of where we could be going in terms of collaboration with industry associations, but how do you see further efforts? Like, what would you say? What would you tell industry associations? What would you tell the rest of our community to, what can we be developing on top of some of the recommendations we've provided? What would you recommend?
Well, I love your idea, and I think you're spot on with more academic rigor in this space. In the course of my career, that went from law enforcement to protection to corporate security, and you go back and you think of just the development of criminal justice programs and renowned institutions like John Jay or Texas State in San Marcos, Texas, which is one of the largest criminal justice programs in the state today. And if you look back at the evolution of those criminal justice programs, that goes back to the 70s, and maybe this is just a natural progression of our industry that really is somewhat new. That kind of began in the 60s in a more robust manner, and so I think that's probably a natural progression that should happen. And I do know that folks like us would certainly welcome that in any capacity, and I think that it would be a great just launch of folks to get them into this industry if we could, or if there were dedicated programs or a John Jay College of corporate security, for example, or I'm just pulling that as a rabbit out of my hat, but you know what I mean when I say that. So I do think it's time to think of things such as that. Now, obviously, that the academic space is one that moves at a snail's pace. Change moves at a glacier pace there. So, who is going to want to spearhead that charge? There's wonderful analytical programs at locations such as Mercyhurst, which is doing great work. But again, those are few and far between. So I think the time is now for that.
Yeah, I'd love to see these newer universities like, it escapes me. I'll find the link. I'll post it under. Singularity University. That's been on my mind a while because they're really something very new, something far more modern in terms of education and facilitation of all types of learning. I kind of like their approach and the way they build a community around it. And it's also very global. It doesn't have any geographic restrictions. That's something that I would love to see for us to build beyond what our associations have to offer. Fred, Travis, I'm very privileged to have had you share these thoughts with us. And Travis, thank you so much for, having the bandwidth, man. I mean, I don't know how you're able to pull that off. I mean, you're involved with doing a lot of things with Fred, and you guys have a very active program going on at the center. You're also involved with a lot of product development, a lot of consulting with clients, and also industry conversations and so on. I'm very grateful to you for having, first of all, as part of, and I forgot to mention that you were also taking up your psychology degree, which was on top of everything else you were doing. So I'm very, very grateful that an idea came to your mind and that you shared it with me, and that you built it up into something that we were able to deliver to. Hopefully it will be useful for the community going forward. Thank you both for your thoughts. I'm really hopeful that maybe this will generate some additional ideas for your center or for other endeavors that you have. And I hope that those who are tuning in to listen to us will also jot down some notes about the ways they want to embrace some of the findings from this research. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you, and please stay well. All right.
Thanks, Ilya. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.